Hi, guys. Welcome to Quack podcast, I guess. Hi, Giordani. I would like you
I
to introduce yourself since you're here with us today, and Alex is not. Who are you? What you're doing here? Guys, welcome to Quack podcast.
there is some echo, I suppose. There is
Now it's
some echo.
not. Now it should be okay. Is it okay?
Yeah, yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Hi, hello. I've been called here to talk about some things about CVs and careers and all the backgrounds, and especially my experience in the last years in the job market. Actually, I'm a developer, by the way. I think that's a pretty short summary of it. Yeah, I would say.
Okay. So you mentioned the job market and that you want to talk about some job markets, the job market situation right now and your story. So first of all, how is the job market
Hmm.
looking for people
Hmm.
in your field right now?
Well, it's an interesting, it's an interesting moment actually to live in. A lot of massive layoffs, like I mean, many people have probably heard. I've one of them, one of the thousands and thousands of victims in the middle of them. Um, Actually, Alex have some probably also some stories about it. But almost everything, actually started from there, and now I feel like many of senior developers, at least even mid developers level, they still have some good chances actually to reinvent themselves, to resell themselves to the job market somehow. But I feel the pain for juniors now. Juniors have a huge struggle now. They don't have a clear path or clear idea how to navigate in the job market now.
That's actually interesting what you're saying because I was actually trying to see it the other way around. So you're saying that the seniors can reinvent themselves, but so you mean change and adapt to the current situation, but can we just name what is the current situation just for funsies so people who are not in this area can understand that too?
You mean the field specifically?
Yeah, because you mentioned that they would need to adapt, but how? So what is changing right now?
Okay, so there were as far as I know in my from what I understood there were two major factors. One was some mechanics in the investing domain related to these technology companies, and the investing methods that they were using, they were appealing for some people in the hierarchy in those companies, and they were useful for the numbers of the company. So when they have to share or talk about the company, those numbers were looking good. But in fact, they were creating more depth in sense of surely economically, yeah, definitely, and other aspects too. And at some point after the COVID has finished, basically, they were trying to cut the costs. They realized there were many aspects in which they could cut some costs, and the model they were aligned before, it was not sustainable anymore. So one major reason was that. The second one, AI, obviously, AI. There are still some companies that are a bit reluctant to go full dive into AI development. Others are already on the edge, basically. They are
I would say
already
that
there.
some corporate, so technological corporate will go there because there's a lot of money there. But then all the corporate they are not that are not so AI like technology centered. I would say they do have this delay when it comes to all the changing processes, changing tools, and stuff like that. So I think those may be delayed a bit. So, for
Uh,
example, Google is doing that, like doing AI, their own AI. But I don't know, P&G and stuff like that. Those are really big corporations, but not technology centered, I guess.
Actually, you're right. There is a distinction between companies that have technology as a core of their business, and those are the main I know better actually, and there are others that are not having the technology as their core business. They're just using technology as a tool. In this distinction, there is Shopify, which indeed has technology as core of their business, and they are doing a full dive in AI.
Yeah. I think that if you are in technology and like your core is the technology, you kind of need to do it. And then also most of the developers will be working in those core technology companies. Yeah, I've noticed some reports. So it's kind of a constant that you have tons of layoffs in those corporates like Google, Facebook, Meta, and they are doing like tons of layoffs right now. And I'm thinking that, yeah, as you said, AI may be a main factor to that. So, okay, you mentioned still the reinvention of the seniors and mid developers. And what do you mean by that? And maybe we will start touching your story probably a bit with this one. So feel free if you want to start.
Okay, yeah. I feel the word reinventing quite personal, actually. Yeah. So a couple of years ago, so not yesterday, not 6 months ago, not 1 year ago. I would say almost 3 years ago now. Maybe Alex can confirm, or maybe not. I don't know. I've been actually fired with all the team in like 30 days. So we were working on this project, and everything apparently, for at least from my side, was going great for the project. And the project manager had started to communicate privately with me about some updates on the project. And in just a couple of days, basically, we ended up in a call with everybody, the whole team, the development team of a project for a client, with the status updates on the project, with a slideshow actually, with a whole slideshow about that, which it was completely unusual. Actually, it was new, unusual, and unexpected, to be honest.
Okay.
And basically, they were saying everything is going to f*** up. Yeah, at some point.
So someone was talking to you and then directly went from that to having a call with how many people in the team?
Dozens.
Okay. And
Less than 20, but dozens.
getting back to this subject that was discussed just with you?
The first time, as far as I know, yeah. But in like 3 or 4 days, we got this call with everybody else. And in 30 days, that I was, me and other 2 people, I think, we were the first round of firings, basically. But that was just the first. So in 30 days, they fired all the team, basically, just in 30 days. And I remember, and I know that because I kept in touch with other colleagues after being fired on Instagram and other socials, just to know and understand more the situation. That is part of doubt maybe you also start to live in. Did I something wrong? Was I a mistake in a situation, or did I fucked up something? many questions come and start to arise actually.
I think that
So
generally when you do get laid off, like that is something that's devastating in a way, just because of those doubts that you may have, self doubts,
yeah,
and it is pretty screwed up that you can be absolutely out of control over someone's decision and get affected by it, and then affected by it psychologically too.
definitely, definitely.
Okay, so that was the start of your story. So they just decided, and was so it wasn't like there was some issue with the team. The team was not working. It was more like a general higher up decision, right?
Ooh, definitely higher up decision.
Okay.
Definitely. In some usually military domain, they have an expression like "I haven't seen it coming," but I
Okay.
should have seen it coming. Honestly, I was kind of too relaxed. What I mean by that, I felt like I was settling in my life. I felt like I was totally safe. And because of that, also, I made some personal and financial mistakes. But I was feeling still safe because of the working situation. Not because of the money I was having, for example, which is another way of
But the
getting the life.
perspective, the
Yeah,
perspective that you're safe
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
you do have a job.
Yeah, yeah. And you still have also confidence in your skills to find another one in the worst case scenario.
This
Because
is
the domain and the field is great for you, for me, at least as a worker in the technology field. But that was a bomb going to explode in my face, basically.
Can I just jump in for a second when it comes to the let's say the field, the IT field? So I'm also in IT field, but the management. So it's a bit different. That's why I'm not so keen on going into really technological specifics somehow. And I'm
That's fine.
giving that to Alex, who is not with us today. So yeah, but still, the so I really do get what you mean by feeling safe about the perspective of having a job. And so, for example, every time I wanted to find a job, it was pretty much a job finding me within a week maximum. It was
Yeah.
so I remember the moment that wait a second. I remember the moment. I'm feeling like, yeah, sorry for that. So I remember the moment when I split with the company I was working with, and I was feeling super comfortable about the whole idea and finding another job because it's so easy. And also I have 7 years of experience and I have the language because that is not something so usual. I mean, we do talk and work a lot in English in Poland, but still I have a strong English. So I was, as you said, secure in the knowledge that I'm going to find something, even if I don't have a job right now.
Yeah, definitely. That
And
was the reasoning.
and then yeah. So sorry, I jumped in within what you wanted to say. So you can continue the story because the bomb was just about to explode. You were sure, secured, and you made some private decisions.
Which
The floor
are,
is yours.
yeah, put me in a wrong place, to be honest. And the thing is that it was so unexpected, and I realized that it was a really fucked up moment when they called me privately to say that I was going to be fired. And I remember I cried because it was very unexpected. And I knew that I wasn't having much money, basically. I didn't have much money to survive many months, because the problem was on the higher level. It wasn't on the market itself. You can't do anything, and because everybody's firing is people, you cannot expect to get hired back from another company because everybody's firing. So what you gonna do?
And then also all of the developers that are fired along with you, they are kind of becoming automatically people who will fight for the place for a new job, like a new job spot, right?
Some more, some less.
In a way.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I was surely desperate, to be honest, at that point, because I wasn't prepared for that. I made some mistakes in my personal life, and they came in the exact moment that the market had problems too. So those two things combined at the very wrong timing. And from there, many problems, many problems, even psychological ones.
Okay.
So at some point, I remember. The thing is that I found some companies along the way with searching and doing interviews. I found some, but also I had the bad luck for some reason to find people that were not reasonable, and I kept jumping from a company to another one and just staying like 2 or 3 months. And for each time I tried, I then stayed unemployed for another 2 or 3 months. And I was jumping from one to another one to another one to another one. In 2+ years of being kind of unemployed and employed, I kept the count, and I reached at least more than 1,000 applications, at least.
That sounds scary.
It was.
I'm sorry. That's unscripted. I mean, that sounds scary. And sorry, we're laughing and kidding right now, but I mean, we're talking about it loosely right now because
clearly,
it's you're off the let's say danger zone right now, and hopefully just out of this whole situation. And I'm going to want to know how it happened again, because the reinvention, we're going to touch the reinvention a lot, I think. And yeah, so you were jumping from company to another, and you mentioned that it was connected to unreasonable people. So you were employed by people, and it didn't work out for you, or how did it work?
There was. I can give you an example. There was a company. Basically, where they were looking for a person that could handle the project by himself all alone. So I had to develop like a website. I wouldn't go into technical details. It's enough to understand the situation. And I said, yes, that's fine. Mostly because I was personally interested in doing such thing. Not only because I was looking for a job, but it was a lucky moment and a lucky occasion that it was also interesting for me personally. So I was very happy actually to join that. And they weren't looking for someone remote, but honestly, it was fine for me. I was so damn happy to have found that, and also it was interesting at the same time. And I thought maybe this time it's gonna work. So they contacted me. We had interview, and for such an opposition, I would make a very in-depth interview to make sure you are the right people for such position, because you also have so many responsibilities. The project is basically almost on your shoulders, technically and whatever other aspect. So we also have to communicate with other departments and make sure you are doing progress and everything is fine without anybody managing you, basically. They didn't have with me any technical question, which is very weird. And it wasn't the first time it happened to me in my career. The first time it happened, it was very similar, and it didn't go well. So the second time, I was already on this kind of state of mind of expecting problems, expecting the negatives outcome. So I was pretty sure it was going to be bad, but I still kept some hope. I still thought, okay, it's not statistics. It's just two occasions. One, that's fine. I mean, maybe it's different. The environment is different. The people is different. The country is different, because I was working abroad when that happened the first time.
Okay.
So I moved to the country in the meantime. So cultural aspects, people.
Yeah, the culture, it can be different. So I guess, so you were still clinging on to some hope, even though there was some expectancy. Okay.
And basically, at some point, I understood, kind of actually deduced, because they weren't communicating much with me. And I was trying to communicate with them and make sure the decision I was taking, they were fine with them, because I'm mostly kind of get used to do teamwork. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't doing like one-man army work all alone in one room. Okay. I was more like team working method.
Team player. Okay.
Yeah, team player actually. Yeah, actually, that was even better. And that is something they didn't like it, but they didn't tell me. I had to deduce from their language, from their body language, from how they were interacting with me when I was interacting with them. And that's
there was an issue.
Yeah, there was an issue. But I still I wasn't able to understand actually what the issue was.
Well, can you tell me, because this is an important thing, you mentioned the cultural difference, and that sounds like a really cultural problem, like communication problem. What was the country? Because those country-specific, characteristics of culture characteristics can be. So I'm just curious.
I found many communication problems when I worked in Italy.
Okay, got it.
They were kind of expecting that you guessed what is best to do. There is a minority, I would say, in my experience, and speaking with other developers in communities and conferences, it's a minority, but it's still a real minority in Italy, in technological companies.
Yeah, this is actually something. So you mentioned the cultural differences, and when you're working in IT, it's really common. And I don't think it's so common for other fields of work that you work so much remotely, but we do work remotely. Like most of my career, I was working for companies that were not in the city I was in, or not even in the country that I was in. And you kind of get used to the fact that you're working with people from other countries, but also it kind of creates new level of issues, because you can get some communication, cultural differences, and then get, for example, feedback that you won't even understand is a negative or positive one, because it's so different from what you're used to. That's why I was asking about which country was it, so, to kind of get the idea if it's something, let's say, that you know from this country that they do behave in a certain way, and so it was a company specific thing and people specific thing, not a cultural thing, I think.
Apparently, I'm so lucky I get those specific companies, apparently, in my last 2-3 years. At some point, I hired a career coach, which is a professional figure I didn't even know exists like 6 months ago. And aside the fact that it helped a lot in ways that I wasn't expecting even, the coaches, I actually explained my whole career story and path and all the adventures I had. They all agreed actually that I was very unlucky, very tremendously unlucky. I didn't have much to do actually, because they were deciding on based on little information, no asking, poor communication, and high expectations. So it was the recipe for disaster, basically.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfect idea to cooperate with anyone. Okay, and also
So that was the time.
you really surprised me about the lack of technological questions, because just from my side, I would say most of the interviews I'm having are 6, 7 stages long. It's like taking a month, and it's not big corporations. It's actually ridiculous that you're spending so much time. Like, you're spending 2 work days on recruitment process if you're moving along the steps, and it's so technological at times, and also completely unnecessarily long, I would say. But so I'm kind of surprised that your experience is like completely the opposite. But I guess that's the idea, to talk to other people and get the view that it can be completely different. I wouldn't expect that at all.
No.
Like,
I would still say it's an exception, to be honest. Yeah, indeed. But
so you were just unlucky.
Yeah, apparently I'm just terribly unlucky. Or at least I was in the last 3 years. Also, one of the last companies I worked with, it was still in Italy, but it was full remote this time, and they were looking for a person that was willing to take part and lead a whole department. And I was really happy again to find actually such an opportunity again. And they were looking to hire and keep that role for a long time. I have to make up something a bit more. They weren't that rich as a company, so you would assume they have put some thought before hiring a person. So you are seeing where I'm going to.
Yeah.
Okay. So I started working. I finished the probation period, and everything was great. Actually, I was thriving in my role. I was waking up in the morning and was really passionate. I was really interested in what I'm doing. I was really trying to keep an eye on results and progressing and keep in touch with bosses and CTOs and whatever. They gave me the freedom to work outside of home, so working at bars and stuff like that. Until one day, I went to the pool. I took a picture, me working from pool, which doesn't mean I was working from the border of a pool. It was a public pool where there were a lot of grass, so there are many seats around there. So I was somewhere far away from the pool, and I posted that on the chat with everybody of the company, which were about like 13 people. 13.
13?
Yeah, 13 people.
Okay. I was expecting like 100 or 2,000. That would be awkward, but.
And they were also close to each other. Some of them also actually have met in real life, I would say, since everything is full remote. So yeah, you would get the feeling that everybody was quite close to each other. And after I published that picture, I basically get the perception. I was getting the perception that my 2 bosses were acting weird towards me from that point on. And at some point, they specified in some kind of company rules, which they weren't existing previously before that day, that we are allowed to work remotely, but not outside of our home premises. So if you have like a personal court or personal garden, you still can go there, but you can't go outside of your house. Right a couple of days after I published that picture. And being able to do that was part of the deal when they hired me. And
that you can work outside of your house, right?
Yes. And I made some calls, and I take some calls, actually. I took some calls at the bars. So I had around me people drinking coffee and whatever. And I took many calls in that situation in that way. And they were fine with that. With specific hardware actually from the noise, obviously one doubt is what about the noise? You try to get also the technology actually to get around those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point I got called here at my house. Someone is ringing on my bell, and is the postal delivery office, and they have something to deliver to me, and then it was evening, which is very, very unusual, very unusual.
Okay.
And I opened the letter. I saw it was coming from my company. I had no previous mention of such communication coming from there. So I wasn't expecting nothing from them. And I opened the letter, and they were firing me with immediate effect.
Because wait a second, do they need to tell you, state what is happening, or just?
They told me. And the reason was they realized they misjudged the amount of work they had to allocate to me for the next year coming. So they decided, since it was way less than they thought previously, I wasn't needed anymore. That was the official reason.
Official reason, but
I know deep in my heart is 50% or 60% probably right. They had previously made some weird decision, even for their fundings, for their startup. But 40% is probably because they didn't have trust. They literally didn't have trust in me. Even though I was already working outside of my home, and I worked like that for 5 months already, and passing the probation period. But when
that is the surprising part, because I would expect that during probation period, if they notice something like this and they have a problem with that, they would tell us. But that's how the IT world kind of started changing. So I would say that 2 years ago, and you may confirm or tell me that I'm wrong, but that's what I'm getting from other people, is that the amount of offers you got made you kind of like the companies needed to fight for good developers. So they were creating environment that will kind of welcome them into the company. For example, I don't know, we're laughing about fruit-free Thursdays and stuff like that, or fruit Mondays. But also things like working from the coffee shop, or I don't know, having workations and stuff that are not happening in any other field. Actually, I think that there was so much of a need to have good developers that the companies wanted to like invite them in with the perks.
Yeah.
But then maybe at some point they kind of decided that they don't need to do it anymore, because there is such an interest at getting a job that if someone is just slightly not fitting, even if they don't break any rules, apparently, as you mentioned, they can just switch it. And I think also what you mentioned about the small companies making poor decisions when it comes to finance, I would say that unfortunately or fortunately, that happens a lot. Like if you have people with no experience and having a new company, but still, it's surprising to have someone in a lead role and kind of misjudging it so much. So I would say that maybe I agree with you that it's like, it wouldn't be fully just that. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was one another example. But after that, actually, that was the last time basically I thought that I have to change something. After 2 years going forward, back and forth, actually with these kind of experiences, I have to change something because something has already changed outside of me. At this point, something I have to change inside of me because I'm not getting anywhere. So that was the starting point to research a bit and talk with other developers and getting the idea. Maybe I can try freelancing.
Okay. So finding your own clients then, and so how does it work then? You have a client and there's a team of freelancers working on something, or how does it work?
Well, the thing is that freelancing itself, it doesn't make, from what I understood in this time, freelancing doesn't mean anything. Freelancing just means more weights on your shoulder. You have more freedom, but the freedom also has some more weights. So you choose to do how you want to do it. And it sounds more like a slogan for a course or a coaching course, but I don't know how to express it better than that. You really can replicate, for example, your life, your working life as an employee, as a freelancer. You can do it if you want. You can just replicate it without the trade-offs, obviously.
But the question is if you actually want that, because that
like, some do want it. Some do want it. Okay. Some do want it. And the very first experience I wanted to get, that was the one.
So you wanted to feel like you're employed and just
okay. I want it because I was getting used to feel like I have a purpose, I'm safe, replicating that model. So the very first thought was freelancing is just a tool to be hired, kind of. I'm changing something to feel better with myself. But as you point out, there are trade-offs and you may not want to do that. But it makes you feel a bit safe because you are used to that model.
I would say that it's something that we talked about on the previous conversation with Alex, that actually, and what I notice about not being employed is that you lose structure. And when you don't have a structure and you don't have something to wake up to, like obviously we do have things to do, but then if you don't have this safety of a structure, it kind of makes the whole day flow through your fingers. Like you don't feel when it happens that you didn't do anything, and then you're feeling disappointed with yourself because you didn't do anything, and then the circle kind of goes on, and it's horrible. So I kind of get the idea that feeling you're like making yourself busy and creating this structure and I don't know, meetings and you have this bracket, a window when you're working can give you the security.
Yeah, I totally get what you said, and that is part of the issue of working remotely already. When we get to work remotely already, we've been companies basically kind of delegated some of the responsibilities they had to us. We had to be focused. We had to be kind of independent in the responsibilities we have to carry without anybody or anyone staying on your shoulder and watching what you're doing and when you're doing and how you're doing it. Partially. With freelancing, that part grows even bigger on your shoulder.
Yeah, because even if you're working remotely, you do have someone you're kind of reporting to, even if you're working remotely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But with freelancing, it's like if you do your job poorly, you just lose a client and then you need to find another client. And also, let's say that the rates that you have around the whole field may get lower because people talk to each other. So if you do not do your job, but it's farther in the future, like you don't feel the responsibility hitting you so fast, I think, if you don't do something as you were supposed to. Like
Yeah,
in opposite to being remotely employed by someone and reporting to them.
I agree. I totally agree with you. But what I just described with my personal experience, it was not that different working freelancing and losing clients or changing projects very often. You can
Yeah.
reframe it in that way, and it is not different. It was surprisingly not different because at some point I realized that freelancers live like that, basically. But the reframing helps a lot psychologically and also economically because you have a freelancer. One of the things that change is usually you get to earn more because you have to pay more of your stuff for yourself. But generally speaking, yeah, you earn more. So
Also, I would say that the client doesn't have the ratings of a company, so you can actually have a bit of a higher rate. You're paying for something, so it kind of evens out for. So for the company, your client, it's going to be more economical to hire a freelancer because they're going to be cheaper than, for example, a software house delegating a developer to the client. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just thinking out
that's
loud a
one
bit.
way. That's one way, but it's not the only one, and it's not even
Okay.
the majority. For me personally, I'm a freelancer in the most literal way. I'm alone. I find
Okay.
myself things. I may contact some agencies to have contacts for clients, but I'm not under some other agency, kind of.
Mhm.
And the thing is that when I was having all those problems within the last 2+ years, I realized that if I get to know how to navigate in a sea of turbulence, I'm not scared anymore of the change, of the problems, because previously, when I was working as a hire person, as an employee, and the market had problems, and I may have been and this time I was a victim of the market changes. I didn't have any tool to navigate all this mess. After I hired a
You just
career
felt
coach,
lost. So you just
yeah,
felt lost
yeah,
and
yeah,
in
and you
danger,
and
basically.
you get all this pushing from inside to just try and try and try and with all the narratives of try harder. But try
Oh yeah.
harder, it's one way, one tool, one option, but it's not the only one.
You also mentioned that, and I kind of wanted to talk about the psychological part and how you felt about this whole situation when you were jumping from one company to another. Because, so for example, first of all, I would imagine that the amount of self doubts at that point were like skyrocketing.
First of all, that happened, but later, within months and months, because the very first moment was like the first time I was fired. The first reaction was crying. Honestly, I just cried. I remember one of my ex-partners was in the house with me, and basically she heard me crying, and all of a sudden, because she didn't know anything about it, and that was the very start, and that was the very first reaction of that moment because I realized I was in very big trouble. I was very trouble. And after that, I get to know what is to be anxious. I didn't know what that was, how that feels. I didn't know. Until then, I didn't know. I just heard from other people what is to be like, but nothing more. I could imagine, but now I know. Now I know.
Yeah,
Now I
we're
definitely know.
smarter. I mean,
And
but it does teach you something, I'd say. It's horrible to say that, but there is this saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And it's something that I would hate to hear when you're struggling. But after, I would ask you this is a tricky question, but so you've been through something really hard, and do you regret it right now? Because it kind of changed you in a way. Yeah.
okay, if I could really ask to make a change, I would just shorten up the whole period, but I would still keep it.
Okay. Fair. So, yeah, because it taught you something and it changed your life into right now being a freelancer and feeling secure. So you're kind of feeling stronger for it at the end. Buddy,
But
I don't
it,
envy you.
I understand why, but it's fine. I mean, yeah, fair enough.
Mm,
The difference is that now I feel safe for different reasons. I feel safe mostly because I went through all this turmoil. At some point, I was so close recently to lose all the money because I was almost finishing them and basically getting on the streets, losing the house because I already lost the car and previous jobs. I don't have a supportive family, which is a huge role in private life when you have problems. And I didn't have any. It's a long story. We don't have time for that. And I was so close to get on the streets that I started not sleeping anymore. I was struggling to sleep for the very first time in my life. For like 3 months in a row, I was almost not sleeping. And I was getting also other issues and other medical issues because I wasn't sleeping at all for 3 months. 3 months is a huge time to have these problems. So I had to ask to my doctor and my psychologist to actually to help me with some chemicals or whatever or something to take actually to force me into sleep state somehow.
I mean, that is actually one of the symptoms that you do get when you get depression. And it's, again, like a really taboo topic for some people. So I don't mean to pry
Indeed.
in any way, but you're being really open. So I'm asking questions. Uh, I know that there is a lot of statistics on and research on unemployment depression. Some people don't even know there is something like that. But one big part of the symptoms that are happening, aside from the standard lovely anxiety and like reduced energy and stuff like that, is
Mhm.
sleeping more or sleeping less and having those issues. And those make you even less likely to get a job potentially and feeling more secure because you're kind of again in this circle of
It's a vicious
being
cycle.
yeah,
It's a
exactly.
vicious cycle. The
So
more the more you the more you let yourself drown, the less likely you will get out. And so the first reaction I get from people I talked and I told about my stories, the first question was, "How the hell do you get out then? You
that was
force."
supposed to be my question. Perfect. You can answer
Go
that
on,
one.
go on. Just forget about what I said.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no. It's a perfect. So you're closing up what I wanted. So I wanted to go there perfectly. Please just continue. Maybe I'm
My
just going to
personal
go.
We have saved 1 minute maybe. Yeah. When I get in that situation, my approach was to focus on what are the things that make someone in my situation better and what I need. For 1 second, I imagined, okay, imagine I don't feel that bad. Imagine I feel more energized. Imagine I have the most self-confidence in my life I ever had. Imagine many things. Imagine I don't have this kind of situation, but I still need to solve the problem. So I don't feel, but I still have the problem. What should I do? What are the things that help someone in that situation? And I've made a lot of research and speak with other people and coaches and stuff like that. I watch a lot of YouTube and people having my same issues, solved a couple of them. I'm very scientifically oriented people, so I searched for a lot of papers. I read through the papers. ChatGPT, it wasn't came out at that time. I remember. No, it wasn't. And so I read
Right
a
now,
lot of
ChatGPT will tell you it can boost your confidence in a way, like if you're starting to talk and prep for some meetings. So yeah.
Definitely.
But so it wasn't there yet, right?
It wasn't there, and I researched many things from the point of view of biology, psychology, neurology, and whatever domain that could help actually, especially for my body, to try and go through these moments. And then I made a kind of plan. At least it's even like taking pen and paper and write on the paper what are your findings, what are the things you have found that can help you. And I've done that part, and I started trying to put some objectives, some targets, and I need to reach. It doesn't have to be strict, like today I have to do all these things regardless of how I feel.
Actually, it gives you, like, even if you do something super small, sometimes it's a success when you're in this hole, so to speak.
The opposite would be probably doing nothing.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So you can do nothing, or you can do some small thing. And even if you do the small thing, just kind of celebrate it inside that you're doing something. And then it kind of grows because you stop feeling so overwhelmed by not being able to do anything. Because you can then retrace your steps and be like, no, it's not that and also you do have imposter syndrome at some point. So it's like something saying in your head that you're shit and you're not going to work out. And then if you do get this rational side that is going to say, no, it's not true because I did that yesterday and did that 2 days ago and I'm making some progress, then it's kind of shutting up the inner voice that's kind of making you attack yourself and is self-sabotaging you.
Yeah. For some reason, I didn't suffer for imposter syndrome, so that helped a lot. I know. It's a bit surprising, maybe.
So some luck. I mean, at least some luck there.
I was so focused on the reasons of the layoffs. So company have done that and that and that. So it took some time to start to self-doubt and have those kind of feelings about doubting about myself. Because the reasons, mainly for me at least, they were on newspapers. Those were the reasons. I was not wrong. I didn't make any mistake. So for a long time, I was already clearly feeling really bad. Starting a bit to be depressed. Struggling to have energy throughout the day to do stuff actually. But I kept forcing myself doing stuff, which I'm not a psychologist and I don't know if I should advise for such thing. But it kept me healthy.
You're sharing your story.
It kept me healthy. For example, I knew I have to do some gymnastics, some activity, some effort, something to pump up the blood in my body, because that makes you feel way better. Because biology have many facts and information about that. It's very real. So even though I didn't have much energy to do what I wanted to do, I still done part of that. So I prepare my shoes, I put out my clothing, and I go to run or go for cycling or whatever you can do. And I've done that. Maybe I wasn't able to do it for the whole hour I wanted to do, or I planned to do it. That's fine.
But still.
30 minutes, 30 minutes. You have done it. The thing is that you have done it and you still got some results. And those results are something that are positive for your body, for your mental health. And they are keeping you on your feet.
Okay, I think we're in this situation where we're agreeing with each other and just talking about this. But it is really interesting. I just don't want to get stuck on this particular thing only. And I do have a few more questions that popped up.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing is that, okay, you did have a problem. And what do you think could make it easier at that point? So look back 2 years ago and to in between those jobs, or after you started feeling like you can't sleep and stuff, like what would be something that can help you?
Well, that could help me. I have some friends, even currently, that have some issues with the job market itself still. And one thing that I perceived and I had for some time, for a really short time, sadly, which you don't have control over, but it helps you a lot, is having people around you. It could be...
Yeah, you do.
People you're speaking and talking via Discord or doing video calls and doing even dinner on a video call because maybe they live far away or they have shifts and they work. So many reasons to be sure you can't see each other very often. But that helps a lot. And I didn't have much, or at least how much I would like to have. I wish I had way more presence of people around me.
Even online.
Even online. Yeah, definitely online. At least online. Nothing is like physically being there in the room with you, getting a hug and cheering and talking about crap and laughing and having contact. Having physical contact is part of how our biology feels a bit more safe. We are wired to feel a bit more safe when we are in touch with other people because we are not feeling alone. And that is the message that sends to our biology. And in that moment, in my experience, I was alone at home because also of the pandemic.
Oh yeah, that is also, so it actually aligned with like everything. You were really unlucky.
I know.
I mean, you couldn't make this up. You couldn't make this up. So you actually you've been fired through pandemic, sitting on your own, trying to find a job, jumping from one job to another with some ridiculous people in there. And then the only perspective you had was having finding another job and probably hoping that it's going to be better. But then at some point, I think when you're in this vicious circle, again, like another vicious circle of being employed by people who are not really working out, then at some point you kind of lose this hope.
A bit, yeah. A bit, yeah. But
then
focusing on what was best to help me in my situation. Another way was even taking simple lessons of acting. because interviewing was very important, and I was very nervous. And they made the filters even heavier than before. So, and even the tiniest thing that wasn't perfectly fitting with their needs, it was a filter to reject you. And
So you
I remember
took acting lessons before, like
on
because of
YouTube. On YouTube, yeah, from other actors, yeah.
Okay, but this is an interesting thing. Never thought of that, actually. I thought of some other solutions.
For me, interviewing personally, at some point after many years in my working in my career, interviewing is a bit of acting, at least a bit, because they have to judge you in a short span of time. So you really have to try for your personal purpose, especially in my situation, if you are very desperate. You have to hide what you should hide, and you have to show what you should show. And to do that, it's a skill. You are not born with such a thing. You don't have experience with such a thing.
I mean, we are kind of used to masking some things, I think, but not in that depth, I'd say. So, for example, you are kind of masking in front of, so for example, you're not showing some things, part of you to your family. You do have to kind of be a social, but like a butterfly changing or a chameleon changing its colors when it comes to, but it is different. And also what you mentioned, you just used a magical word, which is being desperate. Oh. And that at some point you're being desperate. And when you're being desperate, it's actually, so it's ridiculous. It's a nonsense of sorts that you do find yourself in a situation where you're desperate, not because you don't know how to do your work. It's because the job market is as it is. And then actually you are expected to kind of pretend that you're not desperate, because when you're desperate, you don't look so hot for the recruiters, even though you can be a perfect fit.
Mostly, yeah, absolutely. I discovered that later that some HRs don't have that idea, but generally, how much would you risk? Would you take that risk? That's the thing. I mean, yeah, some agree, some don't, but you don't know if the person in front of you agrees or not. You don't know, and you can't ask it. So
you can't be like, can I show that I'm desperate, or should I pretend?
Do you have any questions for us? Yeah, actually, can I make questions now before the whole interview process?
I mean,
but I remember that was so difficult because you're also acting, you are kind of, at least you are just through mask and stuff like that. The muscles on my face were hurting after the interview because I was just faking. I was just trying to hide, like the meme, hiding the pain, but I was hiding even more because I'm desperate. In a couple of months, I finished all my money. I don't have anything to sell, and my family wasn't going to help me.
And then they're asking you, why do you want this job? And you can't say, because I need food.
To pay the bills. What the hell? I mean,
that is, I would say, if I was working in HR, I would want to hear an answer like that. Like, I mean, there are always answers that are connected to the company, but like the main and basic need for someone to work usually would be money.
The thing is that I'm passionate about my love. Sorry. I'm passionate about my work. I could say I probably love it. I started doing my work basically as a kid of 16 years old. Yeah, and I really love it. So the very first answer in a good situation, like now, like in past years, it will be, I am just passionate about it. I just feel a bit caged if I have to do it for some specific amount of hours and in a boxed range of hours. Like 4, and then you have lunch break, and then 4 again. We are not in a factory. That doesn't work out well. For some it works, for me not.
Oh, it depends. You do have some grinders. You do have people who really, really enjoy this sort of work. Yeah. But then if you want it to be really creative, I think it's like biologically you can't do that because your brain is not constructed in the way to work like that.
No, definitely not. But a part of that situation, yeah, I would still do it for paying the bills, to have a life and be independent. Yeah. I love it. I'm not doing because it's just a job and I have to do it. For some people, it's like that, and it's a shame, I know. But it's not my case, even though it's still a problem. I mean, even though that I still have to do it for the bill. So that's the honest answer.
I'm going to open up a bit, but right now, what is happening? So we're doing the Quack, and actually, since I hope you watched the last stream and you know we're doing Quack. But the thing is, so we're starting in this hackathon, and we're doing this app, and we're trying to make it a bit better for people trying to find a job. And first of all, it's really close to my heart to kind of try and help people with that. And let's say take care of those people who are in a situation I am in. But also I wanted to say that since we started, and I have a ton of work because it's just the 5 of us and we're doing something pretty big. I'm thriving just because I have and I can work. It's not healthy, I know, but it's just, having this. So I'm like a junkie right now because I have some purpose, and I believe in it. And yeah, I understand the passion for work then, because it's like if you're doing something that you believe in or you enjoy, it's like the best thing. There is some saying about that if you're working on something you love, you'll never work a day in your life because you're actually, but still we are bound to pay the bills. So I get what you said. Okay. We are, I think, making it really long. It's a really, really nice talking to you. And thanks for being so open, by the way, again, because it's not usual for someone, never mind, for someone to open up so much about such subjects, because it's kind of private, right? So I really, really, really appreciate you coming, joining us, and talking with me on that subject. And I'm wondering if you want to, I don't know, close it up with something that you didn't mention before. And I don't know if I should ask something. I may have some questions, but maybe you have something you want to share for the end of it,
Wow, okay. Unexpected.
It is unscripted,
That's the good part of being live, actually, and going with the flow. I would say that something I can share, actually. Even though there are turmoils and problems that may happen in life, being or job market, or even if it's not even in the job, in other aspects of life. It could be relationships, could be anything. What I've learned is that the most important thing that helps a lot drive through these situations is not knowing what are the specific things to do, because sometimes you don't know to do. So that would help always. But what always helps, in my understanding, in my experience, is having confidence in yourself. That's it.
Okay, so people, whoever is will maybe listening to us. Yeah, I can I just add to it something,
Yeah, sure. Go on. Yeah.
because I do hear in my head that what happens with your life right now, whether it is losing a job or, as you said, relationship issues or whatever it is, we are being faced with different situations, and those situations not always say bad things about us. So, for example, with the job market, it's you're being fired. That
Yeah.
doesn't show your value. That shows that there may be a different situation, like difficult situation in the market. And I would want people to not forget that, because I know there is like a ton of people doubting themselves because they can't find a job. And uh, it is something we need, but it is still something that is happening sometimes, that it's difficult. And then it's going to be better. So in this, like, that's like, I wanted something positive. And thank you for saying this. So we need to believe in each other we need to believe in ourselves. And also we kind of need to believe that it's going to end at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And celebrate when it does, because we need this. Oh, I know we didn't mention that here, but you mentioned before that when you're out of this dangerous waters, your body kind of needs to ease into it.
Yeah,
And
good
it's pretty important that when you're out of some crisis, just give yourself some time, because your body needs to ease up to it. You can still be anxious even though you're out.
Clearly, yeah. But actually, that's a good point. One way to put it in a more practical way is that when facing such issues, but even in other domains, in other aspects of life, is that usually the body gets used to that state of warning, of danger, of flee or fight, or disaster incoming, or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So you also start to expect that from as outcome from what you do, which is a perception, but it's not the reality. And after you finish that period and things start to get better, actually, the body needs to some time, and you can condition the body to try to push a bit on that new direction. So if you weren't doing something previously, some kind of activity, some kind of, I don't know, a project or adventure, or it could be anything, that they were prohibited because of the situation we're living in, you should start doing them right after everything is finished, everything is getting better. Otherwise, it will take quite a lot of time to recover.
Yeah. So you're giving your body the stimuli to kind of know that we're relaxing now. We're celebrating. Something good happened. Yeah.
The body will still respond in a bad way sometimes anyway, but it's fine. It's normal because it was already used to. So it's part of
the cortisol level is like leveling, so it takes some time. Give yourself some time sometimes to relax especially after those situations. Okay, I'm really enjoying talking to you. I'm getting info from the studio that we're getting a really, really long conversation right now. So thanks again for joining me.
Thank you for having me, actually.
Yeah, you're welcome. and yeah, thanks to anyone tuning in to listen to us. I don't even know who is listening to us. We'll see later. So yeah, thanks everyone. And yeah, see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.